Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Cox, statewide Bighorn Sheep Program Coordinator, and thank you for attending our first ever virtual Bighorn Sheep Management and Hunting Seminar. A little different way of providing this information, but hopefully you'll gain a great deal of knowledge tonight to help you on your hunt. So I'm going to introduce all of our folks that will be giving the seminar tonight. So start off with Ed Partee, our field biologist out of Winnemucca. Matt Jeffers, field biologist out of Elko. Pat Cummings, our field biologist out of Las Vegas, who's been around forever. Mike McCusker, game warden out of Reno, that will be presenting the regulations section. Hey, Mike. And we are thankful to have Ryan Werner, taxidermist with Werner Family Taxidermy in Las Vegas, sharing his expertise on trophy care tonight. And then we have two field biologists that will be focused on answering your questions. And that is Joe Bennett out of Tonopah and Carrie Hubner, also from our Elko office. So with that, I am going to hand over the reins to Ed to start the presentation.
All right, thank you, Mike. And I'd like to welcome everybody to this year's indoctrination. Like Mike said, it's kind of different for us. We're used to doing this stuff in person. So we'll just muddle through this year and see how it goes. Few things to keep in mind. You have the ability to do a chat, question, answer, I guess, throughout the presentation. We will break after each major section for a Q&A, 5 minutes to do that. That way we can address any questions that are maybe repetitive questions that come up and stuff like that. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. This year's Bighorn Sheep Management Hunting Seminar. We're going to cover a number of topics. All right, seminar topics on this go around. We got the history. We'll cover kind of a brief history of bighorn sheep in Nevada, bighorn management, biology and the habitat for the sheep, regulations, do's and don'ts while you're out there, identification of age classes and scoring. Pat will go over a real comprehensive section there. Good thing to pay attention to. The hunting section, and then we'll go for trophy care. That's where our taxidermist will come in and talk on this section, and then some final thoughts on the whole program. So we'll go ahead and get started with the history. So bighorn populations in Nevada are thought to have been in the tens and thousands for many years, until European man settled. However, in the late 1800s, European man started to influence areas in Nevada. Some of the major things that, these settlements, mining settlements and railroad towns, they would always locate near water and stuff. This is a kind of a picture of the old town of Hamilton. You can see the trees and everything that have been removed off the hillside that they used for milling and such for their mining. And they always, developed near water. So of course, sources of water for animals. So in order to feed many of these settlements, there was market hunters, and they didn't really care what they killed as far as the wild ungulates out there. They just wanted to feed the settlements and the mining towns and everything like that. So that was the first thing that happened. Later on, there was the migration, or brought in domestic livestock, which a lot of our native wildlife had no idea, or couldn't, fight off any kind of diseases, these novel diseases that were coming in. There was intense competition for forage and water. And then at the turn of the century, it was estimated that there was over 2.5 million domestic sheep and hundreds of thousands of cattle in Nevada competing for the same food resources and water resources that bighorn sheep were competing for. The other thing with the domestic sheep, they brought diseases that were novel to bighorn sheep, therefore creating the elimination, and what is thought to be a disease was the most likely eliminating factor for bighorns in their historic range. Also, by the late 1800s, early 1900s, 2/3 of the northern part of the state were extirpated from sheep. There was only about 15 mountain ranges in central and southern Nevada that still had desert sheep. And it was estimated at the low point in Nevada's bighorn history, and around 1960, there was less than 3,000 sheep remaining. We'll go into a little bit bighorn management on what we did to try to increase and where we are today. And Matt Jeffers will take this section.
Thanks, Mike and Ed. I'm going to cover the next few sections with you, followed by a Q&A. After we finish talking about bighorn sheep habitat, and for the purpose of this seminar, we're going to start discussing bighorn management with the big game capture and transplant program that started in the 1960s, with the main goal being establish bighorn sheep into their historic ranges wherever possible. The first reintroductions in Nevada occurred in 1967 at Hell Creek on the Sheldon with California bighorn sheep. And the next year in 1968, the state released desert bighorn sheep on Mount Grant in the Wasatch Range. We started out using drop gate panel and corral traps for trapping. And as antiquated as this equipment looks now, those systems were what gave birth to our later methodologies. Over time, we moved to more successful capture methods. The drop net pictured in this slide was a primary capture method beginning in the 1980s and well into the 1990s that provided source stock for many of our transplants during the heydays of the big game trapping and transplanting program. And it's still used today in some circumstances. However, we've largely moved to the more current preferred capture method, which is the net gun. This technique is used in most of our capture work today, and the benefits of using a net gun are the use of contract capture crews that have experience handling hundreds, if not thousands of animals on an annual basis. So they're well trained and they know how to handle animals without hurting them. It's a much more effective way to capture animals. We can capture a large number of animals in a short time frame, and it can be very selective as to what animals we want, specific age class and sexes of animals. Once a capture crew catches an animal, they're hobbled and blindfolded by the mugger, and they're put into a specially designed transport bag, and the sheep's hooked to the belly of the helicopter and airlifted to a base camp. At base camp, after the bighorn's been slung in, volunteers and NDOW biologists carry the sheep to tarps or tables. Typically, teams are assigned so everyone knows their roles and assignments for each animal that comes in. Veterinarians and biologists and volunteers all help to collect samples needed to assess an animal's health. And it's at this time that GPS collars and ear tags are attached to animals. We typically try to limit processing time to 5 to 10 minutes per animal before loading them in the trailers. And once in the trailers, they typically tend to calm down. Our transport trailers have been modified quite a bit. If you recall that slide of that old truck with releasing the Ram from back in the 70s, we've improved our transport trailers quite a bit, and they're designed to haul as many as 30 animals at a time, and they typically have a deck separating the lower portion from the upper portion. That's just better on the animals involved and handlers alike. So many different land management agencies and NGOs or conservation organizations have been critical in the success of our Bighorn sheep reintroduction program. And this slide shows the tremendous success of our Bighorn translocation program and the number of Bighorn that have been transplanted to over 67 or right at 67 different mountain ranges between 1967 and 2020. And as you can see, we've moved over 2,100 desert Bighorn sheep, close to 1,000 California Bighorn sheep, and 326 Rocky Mountain Bighorn sheep. So quite the accomplishment. This is a series of slides that kind of touches on what Ed was talking about. In the 1860s, this far left slide shows what is estimated to be occupied Bighorn habitat, or in the 1860s. Then by 1960, like Ed touched on, we were relegated to just a few mountain ranges harboring Bighorn sheep. And then by 2019, with this far right slide here, you can see that we've repatriated a lot of Bighorn sheep throughout the state and have done a good job in filling some of the voids. We're lucky in Nevada to have all three subspecies of Bighorn sheep. We have the Rocky Mountain Bighorn sheep found in the northeast corner of the state, the California Bighorn sheep found in the northwest corner of the state, and desert Bighorn sheep largely found south of Interstate 80. And Nevada's one of only 2 states to have all 3 subspecies of Bighorn. This is a good slide, just kind of merging those previous maps. California Bighorn sheep is identified by the magenta color. That's current occupied habitat. Green represents the Rocky Mountain Bighorn habitat, mostly on the northeast side of the state. And then the baby blue depicts current occupied desert Bighorn sheep habitat, while the cream represents existing unoccupied potential habitat that was or is considered historic Bighorn habitat. This is a really neat slide. Nevada's experienced tremendous growth in our Bighorn population, which has resulted in a steady increase of Bighorn ram hunting opportunities, more than any other jurisdiction in the lower 48. And as of this year, it's estimated there are 12,200 Bighorn sheep in Nevada, more than any other state besides Alaska. And as you can see, we started in 1970 here with a statewide population estimate of 2,900 Bighorn sheep, and we offered 60 ram tags up to this year with a population estimate of 12,200 sheep. That's including all 3 subspecies, with a total of 389 tags offered. So pretty remarkable in just a few decades. Now, once we have a sheep herd established, or for some of those remnant herds, NDOW conducts aerial composition surveys with our own pilots and helicopters to monitor Bighorn health, numbers, and distribution. And biologists are also looking at habitat conditions and water available to Bighorn and other wildlife while doing annual surveys or biannual surveys. And this survey data, along with harvest data, directly ties into what you guys are all interested in. And that's our harvest management strategies. So starting in 1996, we went away from some of the more stringent regulations for ram harvest, and we went to an any ram regulation in all units statewide. We strive for a conservative harvest directed towards mature rams. We don't have any biological impacts with any of our ram harvest. We shoot for average harvested ram age of 6 years old or older. And we removed a lot of the unnecessary regulations and restrictions that existed prior to 1996. Another very important aspect of bighorn sheep management here in Nevada is our water development program. And in many mountain ranges throughout Nevada, water is the most limiting factor for bighorn sheep. And in these cases, we can expand bighorn populations with the development of artificial waters or guzzlers, like we call them in Nevada. As of 2019, we have 206 guzzlers built in Nevada for bighorn sheep, specific for bighorn sheep, and they benefit other wildlife as well. But 180 of those target desert bighorn sheep, 24 for California bighorn sheep, and 2 for Rockies. And over time, the water development program has evolved, and construction methods and materials have also continued to improve. The 2 types of collection services we use are slick rock and an apron type. And as you can see in this slide, it's a picture of a guzzler in the Delamar Mountains of Southern Nevada. It employs the Boss Tank system we have. It's a self-leveling system. These units can typically hold or target to hold between 7,000 and 12,000 gallons of water, depending on how many tanks the state has there. And the self-leveling system have the tanks and the drinkers set at the same level, as you can see in this photo. So the water level in the drinker represents the water level in the tanks. And this eliminates a lot of the moving parts from the old systems, such as the float valve system, that were prone to rusting or breaking apart with the annual freeze and thaw cycles. And we'd be remiss if we didn't give out a huge thanks to our sportsmen's groups and land management partners. All of our supporters are what makes these programs possible. And we have a lot of homegrown or state-grown wildlife conservation organizations, national NGOs, as well as all of our federal partners. So we're very thankful for all of those partnerships. Okay, just a few more topics to be covered before we open it up for questions. And I'm going to cover a quick overview of bighorn sheep biology, as well as look at some of the various habitat types that bighorn sheep inhabit here in Nevada. And in terms of diet, bighorn sheep are generalists in that they'll eat basically whatever's available, but for the most part, a sheep's diet is grass. This is a typical ewe lamb group with a young ram in it. Ewes have smaller sickle-shaped horns than rams, and ewes generally live to be around 14 years old, with the exception being as high as 18 years. And what you can see in this photo is a typical social structure of what you find a couple weeks after lambing. And this is for the most part what you're going to see outside of the rut: ewes, lambs, and some very young rams. Rams don't live as long as ewes, but a few years ago, a 16-year-old ram was harvested in Humboldt County, and the state was able to trace that back to the original date of the release because of an ear tag in that harvested ram. That's definitely on the extreme end. Rams will hang out in groups of 2 to more than 80, and that's again on the extreme end. And what you're seeing here in this photo is a large ram group found on top of Mount Jefferson, one of those places that you can find big numbers of rams hanging out together. In terms of life cycle, both California and Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep rut in November, and deserts tend to be more variable with the rut, and mostly in July, August, and September, but you can see rutting behavior during your hunt in November or even into December. Okay, so for this last section, talk about bighorn habitat in Nevada, and bighorn habitat in Nevada comes in all shapes and sizes. They all pretty much need all subspecies, and no matter where they reside, they pretty much all need food, water, and cover. And in terms of topography, a variety of habitat types exist. This is Echo Lake, in the Ruby Mountains. It's a summer range for Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep in the northeast portion of the state. This is a picture of the snowstorm mountains. This represents typical habitat for California bighorn sheep found in the sagebrush steppe country of northwest Nevada. On the extreme end, this is a typical desert bighorn sheep habitat. This is a photo of the northwest side of the sheep range down north of Las Vegas, and this photo doesn't do it justice, but this is a extremely rugged, inhospitable country, but those desert bighorn sheep thrive in that type of habitat. So I think what we'll do now is take questions or answer any questions that anyone has. We'll take 5 minutes and see where we go from there. And feel free to type questions into the Q&A tab at the bottom. And if you don't have questions, that's fine. Okay, we got a few come in. Are there rules about hunting near guzzlers? And there are no rules regarding hunting around guzzlers, but typically when most of these seasons start, you're not going to find animals around water, specifically with desert bighorn sheep. But we don't have rules regarding hunting near guzzlers. And then the second question here is, are they up and around all day long? And for the most part, you're going to see most of the activity in the mornings and the evenings, but you can find bighorn sheep moving around throughout the day. Absolutely. Got a question about trail cameras, and as of August 1st, you cannot use trail cameras for scouting. So from August 1st to the end of the year, you cannot use trail cameras for scouting. We have a few other more specific questions that I think Joe and Carrie are going to answer on an individual basis, so we can probably wrap up the Q&A for this section.
All right, thanks, Matt. Our next section is on regulations, and we're going to have Mike McCusker share his knowledge on many of those regulations. There you go, Mike.
Well, hello and welcome everybody. Again, I'm Mike McCusker I'm a game warden based out of Reno. A couple of questions that I was going to cover already been answered, but we'll go through them anyways. We all here are certainly wanting everybody to have a successful and once in a lifetime adventure. It's my job to hopefully help you avoid any problems and keep you from having a nightmare. We're going to go through some of the common and most asked questions. There's a million regulations, but we'll try to cover some of them right here. So aircraft and flying will be the first one. Very important. There's many different sides to the aircraft and flying, but first and foremost is it's unlawful to harass any animals, any big game or any animals whatsoever by any means, but not without limiting aircraft. And this includes drones. The kind of the here and now of today is drones, and drones are included in this. So you're not allowed to use them to harass, chase, do anything that with big game. Also in that, you're not allowed to locate any big game animals and then communicate that information to someone on the ground within 24 hours. And also the flight period for you to be able to fly is from like July 1st to the end of February is closed. So you'd have to do it in between February and July to avoid any problems. You can't do it now, and this includes drones as well. Can't use them during your hunt, so just be aware of that. And I will be on here answering questions, any law enforcement ones, if you guys have them in the Q&A session. So next part is guides. And so a lot of people have questions about guides. Some of them you're using them, that's great. but beware. Guiding is defined as assisting somebody in hunting or fishing for compensation, okay? Guides have to be licensed in the state of Nevada as well as sub-guides. They can get in trouble for guiding without a license, but I wanted you to be aware that you guys can also get in trouble if you hire somebody that's a guide or putting himself out to be a guide and he's not really a guide. It's up to you to check and make sure that he is. Look for a license from our agency to combat that. And I do want to explain that what compensation means is compensation is any payment for services, right? It does not include shared expense costs for a hunt. So if, you know, some people are going to have questions, well, what if my buddy wants to take me out there because he knows the area? That's absolutely fine as long as there's nothing above payment above shared expenses. So this includes not only monetarily, but any bartering or any, you know, trade. You know, you take me up there and I'll buy $6,000 of hay from you. That's guiding, okay? So just be aware of that. Okay, OHV laws. So in case you've been living under a rock lately, you know that we have OHV laws in Nevada. So first and foremost is OHVs need to be registered in the state of Nevada. We do accept registration from other states as that registration here. Registration in Nevada is done through the Department of Motor Vehicles. They have forms online. Do get them registered. We will be checking it out in the field. And I also want to point out there are differences between the state, what the state allows, and Park Service and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And anybody else can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe the Park Service and Fish and Wildlife Service don't allow any OHV use unless they are licensed for the roadway. Okay, they don't want any off-road use. They don't even allow them in there. They don't accept our registration. They want a licensed vehicle. And Pat may know more about that. He can cover that at some point. This was kind of one of the questions that was brought up before, but there is a law that says you're not allowed to obstruct, contaminate, or interfere with a guzzler. And a guzzler is any kind of water catchment used for animals to water with, any man-made structure. So you're not allowed to turn them off or contaminate them or keep animals from watering at them. You are allowed, it is legal for you to hunt near guzzlers. As Matt pointed out, by the time your season comes around, they're not going to be tied to water all that much, unlike they are now. But just know that it is unlawful to manipulate any guzzler at any point in time. I think there was a question on trail cameras, but yeah, there was. As Matt said, trail cameras, if you have a trail camera out right now, you're illegal. So you better hang up and go pull it off your water source. But cameras can only be used from December 31st until July 1st. After July 1, they're no longer, or excuse me, August 1st. You can't have them out anymore. However, there is a part that says you can't have anything that sends a real-time message after July 1. So just to put that out there. Weapons, legal, loaded, and roads. So the Bighorn sheep tags are any legal weapons, which includes rifles, pistols, muzzleloaders, crossbows, and bow and arrow archery stuff. Each weapon class has, legal descriptions to be allowed. For instance, like a rifle, they just recently changed the law. You can use a centerfire cartridge, centerfire, between 22 caliber all the way up to 50 if it has an overall case length of 3 inches or less. If you have a question about bows or muzzle loaders and stuff, there's certain criteria that can be used. Same with a pistol. You can use a pistol as long as it's center fire, 22 or larger, and has a greater than 4-inch barrel. For Nevada law, a loaded weapon is deemed, for a rifle, a loaded weapon in the state of Nevada is an unexpended round in the chamber, okay? If it is in the magazine and it's loaded for Nevada law, it's legal, okay? There are exceptions for Park Service and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I'll get to those in a second. A loaded muzzle loader is considered to have a charge in the gun and then have your percussion system attached. And this goes for vehicles, okay? So you're not ever allowed to have a loaded weapon inside a vehicle, and that's why I'm describing these things. A loaded crossbow would be it's pulled back and there's a bolt on the crossbow, those kinds of things. It's pretty self-explanatory, but the big one is the rifle. If there's an unexpended round in the chamber and it's in or on a vehicle, it's illegal. So just know that. And a vehicle is described as not just your truck, but your ATV, your motorcycle, snowmobile, those kinds of things. So be aware of that. Roads, you're not allowed to shoot from or across any roads that are listed in any main roads. If it's a 2-track, you're pretty much okay, but generally anything recognized by the county, can't shoot from or across the road. Park Service and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service have different definitions for loaded weapons, especially rifles. They consider a loaded weapon any ammunition in the gun whatsoever. So know that if you're on Park Service or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service land, that gun should be empty and clean until you're out in the field, you load it up, you're ready to go. Keep everything out of the gun until you're out in the field. Radio telemetry satellite collars. It is perfectly legal to harvest an animal that does have a collar on it. It may not make our biologists very happy because they spend a lot of time and money with this, but it is legal for you to harvest an animal with a collar. You cannot use a radio signal to track them. That's unlawful. And you have to give the collar back. I know that kind of stinks, but it's the law. You have to give the collar back to NDOW or whoever has that sheep or any animal with a collar on it. So you can't keep it. Maybe your taxidermist can make you a copy or a fake one. Mistakes or violations. Undoubtedly, we know we're all human. Mistakes happen, okay? It's what you do after that mistake or that violation that will make the difference. If you make a mistake out in the field, your best bet is to stop what you're doing, get in touch with our department, our dispatch, and get a hold of a game warden to come out there and deal with it. We can deal with mistakes and certain violations, but self-reporting is always the best policy. It's better to report it at first and try to cover it up, because I can guarantee you if you cover it up and we find out about it later, you're probably going to get the book thrown at you. So we can deal with mistakes if it happens, and undoubtedly some will happen. We'd appreciate a call, and we can work with you. Okay. As far as waste, there's an edible portions law in the regs. You're not allowed to unknowingly, or let me get the right terminology here, through carelessness or neglect, cause any meat to go to waste needlessly. Okay, so you have to, it's going to be hot out there, possibly. It's your duty. This is why we hunt. It's for the meat. I know this is trophy, but the meat comes first. So you got to do your best to take care of the meat and get it all off the mountain. The edible portions describe what is needed to be taken off the animal, which includes the front quarter to the knees, all the meat from the front quarters to the knees, the hind quarters to the hock, and the meat along the backbone between the front and hind quarters, which includes the backstrap and the tenderloins. That is what you're required to take off the mountain and bring home with you. We also have a duty to pursue law, which says that if you shoot and wound an animal, you have to make a reasonable effort to track, pursue, find that animal. There is no definition of what that is, but you must do something. You can't just take a shot and say, oh, shoot, I missed. I guess let's go find another one. You better find out if you wounded that animal and then do everything in your power possible to retrieve that animal. Tags. First and foremost, I want you to look at your tags. You'd be amazed at how many people think they drew a tag for a certain area and actually come to find out it's a different area. So look at your tag, look at the season dates, look at the areas, and find out, in our book, what those description of your area is. So be sure to double, triple check it to make sure you're hunting within your area and within your season. The tag is attached to the carcass. It's pretty much Nevada. Everybody in Nevada takes the tag and they hook it on the horn or the antler or what have you. Technically, the tag is for the meat. Okay, the taxidermy stub is for the non-edible portions, meaning the head and stuff that you're going to get mounted. So when you show up to the check-in, make sure your meat has your tag with it, but we want to see any other portion with it. And the meat or the tag always stays with the meat no matter where it is. So keep your tag with your meat. Your taxidermy stub will take care of the head. Oh, I also wanted to mention on tags, punch it immediately. And I say immediately, you can go up and say your height. Well, first of all, make sure the animal's dead. And then you don't want to punch a tag and then it gets up and runs away, because then you're done. But punch the tag immediately upon reaching your down game. Make sure it's dead. You can do your high fives and stuff. But before you start processing the animal or taking pictures and stuff, we expect that tag to be punched. And with these new tags, not like your old tags, you used to punch your tag. Now it's got a Walmart receipt with these numbers and stuff on the sides. It's best if you try to notch it with a knife and like a V instead of trying to punch it, because you're going to rip through the paper. Transportation permit included on your tag. There's 3 sections: the tag portion that you punch out or a notch, the transportation permits in the middle, and then your taxidermy stubs on the bottom. It's basically 3 parts. Anytime somebody other than the lawful harvester transports anybody's game, they need to have a transportation permit. And the key here is it takes 3 people to be involved in a transportation permit. That would be the harvester has to sign it and date it. The transporter has to sign it and date it. And then a third independent witness has to sign it and date it. So it's kind of a boondoggle, but you require 3 people. Your tag allows you to transport your animal in the state or out of the state. But if anybody else is going to transport it, they need to get a transportation permit either off their tag, the one off their tag, or they can call a game warden or go to, I don't know if we have them in the stores anymore, but do it that way. There is a mandatory check-in after harvest. Within 5 days of the harvest, you're required to come in with a skull and horns. That's what we need to see to take measurements. And with the rams, we'll plug them with the seal. Ewes, we won't. But you have 5 days. If you have a problem, with the 5 days, something happens, give us a call. We'll give a little leeway, but we expect you there within 5 days of harvest. Please call ahead, especially with what's going on in the society nowadays. We need to see those things. We want to make sure that somebody's there to check it in for you. Also, during check-in, there's a survey we want you to fill out, and I believe it may have been sent in your email of a survey. This helps the biologists out quite a bit with data on what you're seeing and where. And also, I wanted to mention for the mandatory check-in, the person whose name is on the tag has to check it in. It can't be your brother or your wife or your kid. You have to come in with the information and the animal so that we can check it. Taxidermy stub. So again, this goes back to the meat. The tag stays with the meat. Your taxidermy stub goes with your skull and horn, your skull and cape to the taxidermist. So just be aware of that. And I think that pretty much covers it on my end. Did you want me to address this? I guess I will.
We can let Pat or.
We'll let Pat do it.
Hey, Mike, before we get going, there are a couple questions that would be good for you to address. The first is, how close to a guzzler can you put a blind?
Okay. With that one, how close to a guzzler you can put a blind? You can put it's no different than a spring. There is no law that says there's a distance, so you can put it right there. Okay. There is a law against camping, of course, near water sources, but you can put a blind next to a guzzler if you want to. And what else did you have, Joe?
Okay, and the other one was, what tag do you have to have when you go to the mandatory check-in?
Well, what we want to see, if you're bringing in your skull and your cape, all we need is the skull and horns. But what we want to see is likely the taxidermy stuff. Bring that with you. Your tag should be with your meat. Now, if you bring the whole animal in, that's fine if you have your tag. But we need to see some portion of your tag in order to check it in. But please, please, please keep your tag with your meat, and then bring in one other portion, any other portion that has your number on it. That's what we need to look at. Everything else?
And then lastly, for anybody who can address this, in Hunt Unit 205, the Indian Reservation, you cannot hunt, correct?
And that is correct. Any reservation land, and there's other units around that have reservation land. That's a whole different country. It is not part of our land that's allowed to be hunted. So stay off the reservation. That's not part of where you're allowed to hunt.
Yeah, that's the Walker River Paiute tribal lands, and make sure you look at some maps that are current with that boundary.
There's a question here too. I guess I'll answer it on air since we got a couple of seconds. Where would the nearest check-in be for Zone 213, and what is the phone number for that check-in? Actually, you guys can check the animals in wherever you want to. Wherever you live, you can bring them back. If you travel up north and you're from Vegas, or you're from north and you go to Vegas, you can bring the animal back home and check it in Reno or wherever that might be. But for 213, probably the closest place would be Tonopah, and you would have to call that number. And I don't know what that number is. Somebody wants to chime in.
I'm posting it on there right now. I'm the biologist for that.
And to follow up, Mike, we will be sending a couple handouts to your email address in the next week or two that will have biologists who oversee particular units, those offices that you can check your animal in, your ram in, and a few other things, like even land management agencies, whether it's Park Service, BLM. We want you to be able to do your homework. So we'll provide some of those phone numbers and contacts to help you do that. So I think we're gonna move on to the next section with Pat Cummings, but please feel free to continue to ask your questions on regulations through the Q&A, and Mike or others will try to answer those. So Pat, take it away.
On this last slide, having to do with special regulations, it is important to note that from a statewide perspective, there are many laws, regulations, and restrictions that span different land management agencies. As part of your homework for preparing for your sheep hunt, you must do your due diligence. You should contact the land managing agency that corresponds to your hunt area. I recommend, for example, if your hunt is on Bureau of Land Management land, that you speak with the resource manager at the supervisory level and ask questions. And it's also my recommendation that you contact the BLM law enforcement officer and ask additional questions. And moving on from there, we will get into the next section. This is a section on identification of age classes and scoring. At the end of this section, there will be a 5-minute question and answer period. In this section, we will look at not just horn characteristics, but also body characteristics. There are both horn and body characteristics that generally indicate a mature or older age class ram. It is important to remember that, like people, there's much variation in the physical features of rams, and that no one characteristic by itself will always indicate maturity or older age class. So there are exceptions to each of the things or features that will be covered. Use all the cues or tools that are about to be talked about. So this is important. If you're interested in a ram, you want to get a very good looks through your optics at both side views, as well as the ram looking in your direction and the ram looking away from you. That offers you a good view of the back of the horns. The simple hand-drawn illustration very effectively compares and contrasts differences between gender and age class. Portrayed in this slide is a mature ram, an immature ram, and a ewe. The mature ram on the left exhibits certain horn characteristics. For instance, the horn comes high off the head. The horn holds mass all the way around through the curl, and the horn drops low relative to the jaw line. The space in here is large in most cases. That space can vary. Sometimes it can be large enough to accommodate a large orange. Rams, as we say, mature rams, that is, are boxed up. They have a boxy horn conformation. The exception being California rams. A lot of California rams, mature rams, will retain a triangular horn conformation. But for the most part, most of the deserts, most of the Rockies, as they get older, they will lose that triangular horn conformation and they will become increasingly more boxy. Another important thing to remember is that ram horns look larger when you have a rear view. That is, when they're looking away from you. Mature rams also, they tend to, not always, they tend to broom off the ends of the horns. Well, what is brooming? Well, rams being rams use the headgear quite a bit. They use it for, obviously, for clashing, battling other rams, for dominance and to breed ewes. They also, in glancing blows, they will splinter the ends of the horns. Rams, when they go to sleep, they'll lay down and they'll grind their horns in rocks and gravel, that kind of thing. So it's that kind of activity that wears on horns, and that is what we call brooming horns back. That is a characteristic that we see on older age class rams, but like I said, not all of them are very broomed. Now, in contrast, the immature ram in the center has a triangular horn conformation, and he has a continual taper. There is holding no mass, very thin tips, oftentimes retaining a portion of the land tips. Young rams often, because their horns are growing so quickly, they have a lot of gray to the horns. If you look at lambs, for instance, lambs have dark gray horns. That's because the horn is rapidly growing. And even young rams, even through age 5, you can still see some graying at the base of the horns. One thing to realize here is that, and this is kind of important, that rams will not even begin to hold mass until they enter their 4th year of age. Now, to contrast even further, on the right, we have desert bighorn ewe, for instance, sleek face, narrow neck, sickle-shaped horns, and that is a stark contrast, really, even to a yearling ram. A yearling ram, to some people might have similar horns, but the skull structure is different already. And the skull for a yearling ram is going to be broader than a skull for a ewe, and it's broader because it has to accommodate the future growth of the horns. Here we have the real deal. These are the horns, and on the far left we have a ewe, and she has the characteristic sickle-shaped horns. In cross-section, her horns will be at the base basically oval. And to contrast that with the center ram, this is a young ram. Continual taper, not holding any mass. And then down here we have 2+ inches of the lamb tip still. Very, very light horns, contrasting with this bruiser on the right, horns coming high off the head, holding all this mass all the way around, dropping very low with respect to the jawline. Look at all this space back in here, and then look how chipped out these horns are. Even for a 5, 6, 7-year-old, you don't see horns chipping like that. This is the first slide in a series of 5. We don't need to pay attention so much to the age. We're looking at horn conformation essentially as the ram gets older. In this slide, we have just a 2-year-old ram with a pronounced horn triangulation, constant taper, very thin tips. A slightly older ram It still has a triangular horn conformation, but as you can see, it is becoming more boxy. For the most part, it is a continual taper, very thin tips, not dropping down low at all, really, with respect to the jaw. He's a 3-year-old in this picture. This next picture, we have a 4-year-old ram, and he is just beginning to hold mass right in here, but he's still continually tapering. He's still a young ram. And here we have the bruiser, a 10-year-old ram. He's fully boxed up, and he's well broomed on the left horn, and he's dropping very low with respect to the jawline. Actually, this is our this is our 7-year-old, fully mature ram, just holding mass right in here, like I mentioned. Our bruiser is this next slide, our 10-year-old ram, very well broomed off on the left. He too dropping very low with respect to the jawline, holding a lot of mass in here. An excellent slide showing a young ram and an older age class ram. This young ram's got a sleek face, narrow neck, light in the body, continual taper, has the graying of the horns up here. That's characteristic of a young ram. Very thin tips. We can see that really well from this angle. Contrast that with this older age class ram. You got the sunken in cheeks, the Roman nose, coming high off the head, holding this mass all the way around. Big space in here, roomed off, thick neck, heavy chest. There's going to be no contest here. This young ram knows the deal, and this guy means business. They're just posturing. Estimating age by the horn ring method. Okay, it's important to note the attitude of this sheep, this ram. The head is held upright. This ram is looking left. The 3-year ring tends to be a series of less distinct rings, but not always. The 4-year ring tends to be the deepest, darkest cleft, but not always. As the ram gets older, in most cases, there's less space between the rings, but not always. Sometimes there's a really good rain year, a good forage year, and there could be an awful lot of horn growth in intermediate rings. Okay, this is now a point to where I ask you, after we've been discussing aging by the horn ring method, we can see that this is a mature ram. This is a California ram. We have sunken in cheeks, a Roman nose. But my question to you is, where is the 3-year ring? Where's the 4-year ring? Okay, if you guessed, this is the 3-year series right here. Here's your deep dark 4, ring 5 in here, and ring 6. This ram happened to not be heavily broomed. This blood on the horns, keep in mind, you want to get that off of there, and Ryan will probably speak to that. Okay, what's going on here? The horn rings are not showing up that well, but remember, there's a lot of variation among rams. Some rams, even in the hand, are difficult to age. That said, we can see he's holding mass. There are many horn chips. His left horn is broomed, and the large space inside the horn curl is very noticeable, and his horn drops low relative to the jawline. So when I ask what's going on here, well, there's a lot going on. Don't just look at the horns. There are body characteristics that indicate this ram is an older age class ram. The full neck, the deep chest, and slight atrophy to gluteal muscles or the buttocks, and a dingy appearance to the upper white of the rump patch. In addition, like the elbows on older dogs with those pressure sores, rams can develop similar pressure sores on their forelimbs in the area that contacts the ground as the sheep lowers itself to drink. Older rams can also develop pressure sores on the chest. Okay, a lot going on here too. We got a lot of rams all close together. Take a special note of this young ram on the right, given what we've already been talking about. He's got a very sleek face, slender neck. He has still got the graying at the base of the horns. He's constantly or continually tapering here. That's a young ram. It's a young ram. But this ram in a group of ewes in lambs is going to look pretty big. And that's how a lot of 3- and 4-year-old rams get harvested and end up on my checkout table every year. So when we're looking at the rest of these other rams, I mean, there's really nothing all that exciting really in here. I suppose perhaps this guy right here. But one of the messages that goes with this slide is if you see something that you really like and you're going to be pulling that trigger, please, take the time and let them separate out. Okay, here we have a Rocky Mountain Bighorn ram, and it's another ram where I'm going to ask you, how old is this ram? And maybe you could venture a guess on Boone and Crockett's score. So what we really want to do is try to find, as soon as we can, that 3-year series and that 4-year ring. So how old is this ram once you find the 3-year ring and the 4-year ring? Well, hopefully my cursor shows up here right now. And that is the 3-year less distinct ring. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's a 10-year-old ram. This ram...
Try your mouse again, Pat. Yep, now you got it back. Yep, you got it.
Okay. 3-year-old ring, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He's a 10-year-old ram. This ram did not broom his horns. That happens. If you notice, too, he's got a radio collar on. As Mike had pointed out, by regulation, the radio collar has to return to the Nevada Department of Wildlife. And I must say, if you harvest a ram with a radio collar, which is perfectly legal, that collar has done quite a bit of damage to the cape. It has broken off the hairs all along much of the neck, and it has basically broken off the hairs that make up that nice mane on the dorsal part of the neck. This ram attained a score, if I remember correctly, of 165 Boone and Crockett points. Okay, what's going on here? We have 2 rams from the Muddy Mountains. They're both 9-year-old rams. They're both older age rams. We could see that. Heavy in the body, heavy in the neck, kind of a loss of muscle mass in the gluteals, and they're both mature. But there's a notable difference in horn mass. So since they live in the same area, they're on the same nutritional plane, they eat the same forage, what would account for the difference in horn mass? If your answer is genetics, you are correct. That's what it is. It's just different genetics. Trophy big game animals may be measured for Boone and Crockett score. For rams, a Boone and Crockett score reflects not only the mass of the horns, but also asymmetries between the horns. The principal features to be measured are horn length and circumference. Here we have a mature California Bighorn ram. Insofar as deriving a Boone and Crockett score, the length of the longer of the 2 horns is divided by 4 to get the quarter measurements that apply to both horns. The arrows indicate where the quarter measurements will be taken. Their first circumference measurement is at the junction of the skull and at the base of the horns at the hairline. Note the space inside the horn curl, the mature face, and how low the horn drops relative to the jaw line. Okay, in this exercise, we are going to consider a California ram, it's a mature ram. You can see the face, sunken cheeks, Roman nose, and we're going to hold the circumference steady. The basal circumference, say, is 14 inches. It's average basal circumference. So if we have a ram with an average base with 30 inches in horn length, where does that put us Boone and Crockett class-wise? Well, it's going to put us in the 150 Boone and Crockett class range. Now, if we were to add 3 inches to the horns, now we have 33-inch horns, keeping the base the same at 14 inches or so. That will put us It'll boost our score up into the 160 Boone and Crockett class section. And if we take that one step further, add another 4 inches out to a 37-inch ram, holding that base at the same 14 inches. That's going to drive the score all the way up to 170 Boone and Crockett points. Pretty impressive. Okay, this is one heck of a ram taken back in 2013 in Unit 253 off of Michael John Peak. Unit 253, otherwise known as Bear Mountain. And if you could try to come up with an age estimate and even a Boone and Crockett score, there's an awful lot of horn growth, obviously. This is going to be probably the 3-year series down here. This ram is not very old, just to give you a hint. But his score is quite impressive. It's a 3-year series. Mike, is my pointer showing up?
No. Maybe go back and forth across the screen. There it is. Got it.
Okay, so this is actually 3 years in here, which is mind-boggling. This ram is so impressive. So he's going to be 4 in here, 5 right here, and 6. Can you believe that? He's only 6 years old. I don't know if you derived the Boone and Crockett score on your own, but he netted 177 and 1/8 Boone and Crockett points. And this is a California ram. And he was also taken in 2013. And he scored 151 Boone and Crockett points. And since the horn rings are not showing up all that well, I will just mention that he is a 7-year-old ram. And so we've moved through this ID and scoring section. Sorry, it was a little rough, but at the end of this section, you can expect we'll have a 5-minute question and answer period. And please, if you have questions, please ask them and we'll answer them.
Yeah, Pat, tremendous amount of information to be able to age and score. A lot of great stuff. Hey, Pat and Mike, looks like there's been a few questions regarding picking up deadheads, ram skulls, and it depends on what land you're hunting. Maybe both of you could speak to that question.
I guess I'll go first. With regard to Park Service units, i.e. That being the Lake Mead National Recreation Area and the refuge system, the Desert National Wildlife Refuge, when it comes to pickup skulls, it is illegal. You cannot pick them up. They are considered artifacts, much like an arrowhead. They must remain in place. As far as BLM public domain land, that is something that Mike's going to want to cover.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I did answer one question similar to that in the Q&A, but I'll go since there's so many questions. So legally, Nevada law says you're not allowed to possess any part of a big game animal without a tag. However, what we have embraced at the department is if you do find a deadhead of whatever species, document it, pictures, GPS, and then if it's not on Park Service or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service stuff, document it, get in touch with us at one of our offices, you bring it in, we will investigate it, and what that, we're going to try to determine either on scene right there with you, have it in hand, or we may have to go back out to the location you found it. If we determine it is a man-caused mortality, be it a poaching, a hunter wounding loss, a hit by a car, it becomes property of the state and we keep it. If we determine that it is a natural mortality or undetermined, natural being predation, age, disease, what have you, then we will issue you a deadhead certificate or a salvage certificate that allows you to possess it. You can never barter, sell it, or trade it, but it then allows you to possess it. We will not seal it, which would legitimize it for sale. So, but it would allow you to possess it on your own with that documentation. Hope that answers the question.
All right. I think we're going to continue, and we'll have Joe and Carrie and others answer through the Q&A your questions.
We're going to have Ed wrap up hunting.
Okay.
All right, so hunting, this is kind of a once in a lifetime tag. So one thing that I need to reiterate here is make sure that you guys take your time and enjoy your hunt. There's always seems to be a lot of pressure on the tag holder. I've seen guys just get sick over having a tag because of the pressure. It shouldn't be. It should be a good time. Enjoy it. Some things to consider is some of these hunts are pretty rugged terrain. Make sure you're physically prepared for it. Also, your equipment. I mean, make sure your equipment's good. You know, have a couple pairs of boots. You're bound to get blisters. So make sure that you take care of yourself. An important part, you know, sighting in your rifle, you know, that's huge. And sometimes it's not a bad idea to take a backup rifle because you're going through some rough terrain, bounce it off a rock, and then that could ruin your hunt or end your hunt. Might not be a bad idea to have an extra rifle there just in case something goes wrong. Be very knowledgeable about the area you're going into. You know, pre-scout where you can, use GPS, look at maps, talk to the area biologists. They'll be more than happy to help you out when you do get a hold of them. The other thing is your vehicle. Don't lack on your vehicle. Make sure that it's working good, that you have extra tires. There again, you're going through some rough, rocky roads. There's a lot of tires eaten up in Nevada terrain. So just keep that in mind. Not a bad idea to have a cell phone. In a lot of parts of northeastern Nevada and northwestern Nevada, you may not get good cell phone service. So keep that in mind, you know, whether it's a satellite phone or those spot devices or something, just to kind of help yourself there. And then when you do have an animal on the ground, make sure you have, you know, your knives, your sharpening kit, everything that you need to process that animal. Of course, after you punch that tag like Mike was talking about. Sunscreen, coats, jackets. I mean, you're gonna have all sorts of different kinds of weather. Lots of ice, that kind of thing. Keeping your meat cool. Just like I said, you're after a grand trophy here, so just take care of it. Weather is a huge factor in Nevada. I don't care if you're up north or down south. Be ready for all kinds of weather. It might be 80 degrees at one point in your hunt, but then again, a storm could come through and you could be looking for extra clothes because now it's hailing on you and it's maybe dropped 30 degrees or even 40 degrees. So keep that in mind. Just make sure that you're prepared for any kind of weather. Nevada is constantly changing in weather, so just be aware of that. Make sure that you're taking that into consideration when you're packing your gear for the day. So optics is a huge thing. You're going to want to take the time to glass for your animals. It's a little bit different than any other species. Spot them before they spot you. That's always a good thing to keep in mind. It's not like a mule deer hunt. You're not walking into a sheep without knowing it's there, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to bust that sheep out and he's going to take off and you'll never see him again. So just make sure that you're glassing a lot, spotting those sheep. It's best with these sheep too is if the sheep's above you. The minute you get above a sheep, they get pretty nervous and they'll jettison out of there. So just keep that in mind when you're glassing up sheep. All right, this is kind of what you're going to be looking for. You know, sheep at a distance. You're looking just for something out of the ordinary on that hillside, whether it's a white bud or maybe a shine off a horn or something like that. And then you got to plan on how you're going to get into that animal. You can see those canyons and everything that are kind of around that. You're going to have to use the wind and everything for your favor to hopefully get in within shooting range of that sheep. That I think I saw a question earlier about, where are you going to find a sheep? And I've personally seen it. I know all the other biologists and probably even Mike, the sheep are going to be where they're going to be. I've seen them on the very top of peaks, and I've seen them in the valley floors. I've seen them right next to roads during the hunting season. So they're gonna kind of be all over. They can be in the trees, the flats, the hilltops. So it's just, make sure you're looking at all different areas. Get familiar with the terrain you're hunting in. That's where all your research prior to getting out there to hunt really comes in. And then, like Pat mentioned earlier, you want to look at multiple views of these animals. I mean, look at this animal. He's got that big Roman nose he's talking about. He's got good mass. He's carrying it. It's broomed. I mean, what a beautiful ram. If you saw that, would you shoot it? This happens. Okay. Sometimes our sheep will be missing a horn. That's why we can't stress enough to look at all different angles of that animal. That would make a great mount, I guess, if you put it up against the wall or hit it in the wall. But like I said, make sure you get as many views of that sheep as possible. All right. Any kind of reports that we get from the hunter is just hugely valuable to us. If you see domestic sheep or even goats out there, please let us know, because that's something that we can coordinate to get removed out of those bighorn sheep habitats. We have ways to going through with Department of Ag to get this done. Just any kind of information you can get us, how close they are to bighorn sheep, any kind of markings on the domestics would be greatly appreciated. And immediately give us a call, either your local biologist, your game warden, Operation Game Thief, whatever. Just get us that information, because it's hugely important to us. Meat goats, that's another thing that's becoming a big, huge thing for weed control. And these critters do get away from the flocks. So it's really important that there again, I mean, they can transmit diseases just as easy as a domestic sheep can. So please make sure that you let us know anytime you see them or show up. We have it, every year we have stuff like that. So please let us know as soon as you can. One thing that we've done in the past and will be most likely contacting your taxidermist is, for collection of samples, for disease issues, surveillance, that kind of thing. There was a question earlier about things to look out for when we're talking about MOV and other diseases. I mean, if you come across an animal that's just in poor body condition, might be sneezing or coughing, that's huge for us also. That's one of those deals you let us know right away as soon as you can. If you see a bunch of animals coughing, or even one, I mean, it's good to let us know. That way we can go out and investigate that kind of stuff and go from there on those. But like I said, as far as I know, we'll be probably contacting a lot of the taxidermists to try to get samples through them this year. So we'll go to a quick question answer segment real quick, and then we'll go into our taxidermist and trophy care.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, maybe while we're waiting for some questions, before we turn it over to Ryan, there was a question about some of the pathogens that cause disease events, die-offs. Ed alluded to MOVI, so that is short for Mycoplasma ovipneumoniae, and it's kind of a trigger pathogen that has been detected during these disease events that we send samples off for testing. And unfortunately, in 2018 and in 2019, we ended up having the hunting season for desert bighorn be near the beginning of disease events. One was in the Clan Alpines, and another one was in the Stillwater Range, and we also had a disease event in the Gabbs Valley Range. So if we happen to have people seeing nasal discharge, coughing rams, we may be reaching out to you, the hunter, to help us collect samples from your harvested rams. And we've had great success in your cooperation and understanding and learning the extent, both time-wise and geographically, the extent of those disease events. So really appreciate if you do get a call to do whatever you can to help us with samples.
Real quick, Mike, one question is regarding, where you may want to describe, taking the pluck versus taking part of a lung for sampling purposes.
Well, hopefully we won't be asking anyone this year to do that, but yeah, I don't want to get into that, but hopefully we won't be needing that this year. All right. I'm going to go ahead and put our trophy care presentation up and give control to Ryan.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike, and congratulations to all you hunters out there. I know we've been trying to get this done for a long time and finally got a tag. So with that, on the bighorn sheep field care and preparation, your preparation, like you've been hearing from everyone on here, it's very important to get set up and ready for it. Before you go out there on your hunt, you want to do a lot of preparing. And like I said, with the, shooting your rifle, making sure everything's zeroed in. You also kind of want to pick what might look cool in your house, where you want it. That's always can be changed, but if you have an idea, you can prepare when you go out in the field a little bit better. So they offer, like say life-size mounts. Sheep are almost a once-in-a-lifetime tag. Shoulder mounts, they do some pedestals. You can do some wall ones, and then you have your European mounts. So kind of knowing what you want to do before you get out there is very important. Once you do get out there, if you're going for a shoulder mount, like I say, you want to keep everything out there. The weather's a little cooler by the time we get most of these hunts going. But when you get up to your animal, once you've made that good shot that you've been practicing on for years, you'll go up to your animal, and then the best thing that I do if you're doing a shoulder mount is cut right between the front and back legs, and you'll cut a circle around the entire animal. Then you got your front legs. You usually go down about the middle of your front legs around the elbow, and you'll make another circle. Once those circles are done, you almost kind of go up the ridge of the back, all the way to the back of the horns. And I know this is a deer, but it'll be about the same type of way to do it. So you'll cut it all the way up the back, and you want your knife aiming up, not down. That way you don't cut your hair. You'll pill it. There's pilling or a sock method. If you peel back the skin and tube it like a sock, there's less cuts on it as also. When you're cutting behind your legs, cut where the two colors meet, and you'll see them very significant. One's like a dark gray, and then there's a light color. So that'll help you. And then, like I say, this is for a shoulder mount, and you'll see that cut in the middle. So that'll help you go there. you can cut the carcass approximately 3 inches below the head or neck junction. Believe it or not, on a lot of the field care, Bighorn sheep is actually it's really good meat. It's some of our favorite here that when we've tried it. Very good, especially if you have good preparation in the field. So yeah, you'll cut at the neck junction about 3 inches down, and then you'll hit that back joint and it'll come right off. And it also helps you not go too high and cut with a saw, because sometimes they'll get samples at NDOW to help prepare everyone for the upcoming hunts. So here's another good diagram. After you cut your circle around the belly and the legs with your blade aiming up, cut from the belly, circle up between the ears, going on either side of the mane. Stop here if you're not going to cape off the face. If you are caping off the face, you'll make a Y to each of the horns on the back. And then you'll, again, use your knife up and not there. And you got to see your taxidermist. There's a lot of good taxidermists, a lot of hunters up there in Reno. The best thing to do is like going to your doctors, talk to your taxidermist about what you would like, what they would like you to do, and they'll even give you some pointers. So there's a lot of planning involved in this, you know, like we heard earlier with boots, just gear, getting in shape and everything else. Life-size mounts, there's 2 different kinds. So if you want your sheep laying down, of course you'll want to cut up the belly because you'll see the back. If you want it standing, sometimes you want to cut down the back so that you won't see the stitching there. So here's a diagram of a belly cut, and there'll be no stitches on the back. So you'll just kind of use those lines of the color change straight down the belly, and then here, and then all the way up. And then those stitches will all be hidden, especially on a lay down. This one is a dorsal cut. So that's down the back. So the stitches are really easy to hide here, and it's pretty good and you can do it. But if you dorsal cut down the back, do not gut until after the animal is skinned out with using this method. Of course, you want to do it fairly quickly and as clean as possible. Like Pat said, if you get some blood on the horns or the hide, we recommend not soaking it too much, but yeah, definitely get a wet rag and wipe some of that off before it dries. It could stain it a little bit. Things to remember, sharp knife, that is the best. We do recommend, and what we use is a Havalon, and it's basically a changeable blade. I know we carry them, Sportsman's Warehouse, and some of the other local shops do it. After you've caped out your trophy, let your hide cool down before placing it in a game bag or trash bag. And one of the best ways that we do is when you open it up, it's moist. It's really moist. So put it under a bush. A little bit of that breeze, getting in the shade, it'll actually cool it down quite a bit with it opened up before you put it in your bag. Because if you put it in hot and the skins are touching, sometimes it'll almost sweat. And the hotter it is and the warmer, with it being wet, is where your bacteria grows rapidly, and that causes your hide to slip and some of it to go bad. Once it's cooled down, usually, like I say, by the time you finish field dressing, quartering, keep your hide cold and dry. It's very important. Bacteria does grow rapidly in the heat. How to keep it cool. A really good thing that we like to do is fill some empty milk jugs or water jugs, freeze them up. They keep your hide cool, but as it does melt, it doesn't sit in a big pool of water. If you're up high, invest in a bag of dry ice. If it's really cold and you're in the snow, you can even leave it out in a game bag. Just make sure it stays there. Never put the hide on directly on the ice. You don't want it to freeze or burn the hide. Time does matter. So it's like, you want to treat your hide like you do your meat. Like you wouldn't want a steak out sitting for a day and a half before you eat it. Avoid getting blood on it as best you can. It does happen. So when you do, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. We can usually get it out pretty quick also. When cutting along the mane, which is on your back and your dorsal cuts, choose one side rather than going down the middle. This keeps the mane intact and beautiful without the stitching getting in the way. When cutting the legs, always cut where the two colors meet, like I said. It makes it a lot easier to hide some stitching. Salting your cape. Don't salt your cape. And the reason why is if you don't flesh it properly, it'll dry out the meat. So between the meat drying and the hide, you'll leave a moisture gap in there. So everything else will be dry, but except for that. Well, then that'll cause a bald spot or a slip spot on the back side of your mount. There's a lot of ideas. Sit down. You know, some people have a hard time getting them in the house because some family members don't like it. But if everyone sits around and looks at it, these are beautiful to have. Beautiful displays are our state animal. We're lucky enough that we have some good biologists in the game management system with the Department of Wildlife that we're able to harvest these animals, and they're a really good addition and a piece of art to put in our house. I'm going to put my phone number on the question and answer for a text line so you guys can text. If you have any questions, this is the first time doing the sheep class here. I'm sure they might have another few questions too, but yeah, be safe, plan ahead of time and have a lot of fun. But this is something that is worth a lot. If you don't want to do anything with it, we do buy, or we'll even trade out stuff to get your hides, because some hunters just get in that situation where their hides go bad, and we use replacement capes to mount theirs. Sometimes we even donate them to museums and whatnot. So again, be safe, have fun, congratulations, and I'll send my text line. And I think this concludes my part, and hopefully I didn't miss anything, but you can always reach us by phone. Look us up on the internet, and we also have a website with some of the questions on there also. So again, Mike, I appreciate you having us on there, and Patrick, he's good at answering some questions. So this concludes my part.
Thanks, Ryan. And we're going to have a Q&A. So again, feel free to type your trophy care questions for Ryan, and we'll try to help answer those. So we'll take a few minutes. Yeah, I think one of the things that Ryan was impressing is make a decision if you're going to do a full body or shoulder or pedestal. The worst thing you can do is get excited, and you think you're going to be fine with a shoulder mount, and then you get out there going like, man, I think I may want to consider a full body. So be prepared, and like he said, talk it over with your family, and don't shortcut the caping. Well, we are on the back stretch of our Bighorn Management and Hunting Seminar. We're going to be wrapping it up with a practicum or a training session where Pat is going to walk you through a series of photos of rams with from different angles, different perspectives, and he's going to ask you what's your best guess at the age and the score. So again, please continue to ask your questions regarding trophy care, and I am going to share the screen. Pat, are you ready?
I am.
All right. All right, we got the shared, and let's hope we can get the keyboard control. Here you go.
Okay, there are 5 ram skulls in this age and scoring session. For each skull, we have 3 images: a front image, a side image, and a rear image. This is the first. This is the desert bighorn. Obviously, we have an image or a view where he's looking at us. And like Mike said, we're asking you to come up with estimates on age and Boone or Crockett score based on some of the things that we covered earlier in the seminar. It can be difficult, especially looking long ranges through optics, trying to figure this stuff out when your lighting isn't good or you're looking over great distances. But what we can see with this guy right here, he has a bit of a triangular horn conformation, continual taper. He's not really broomed off, so we know he's not that old, right? But we can see some rings from the front view. So what ring would this be?
Here, there you go. You got it.
So what ring would that be? Followed by that one. Followed by that one. So we see 3 rings standing out, right? Okay. Okay, same sheep. He's looking to our right. And is this our 3-year series? Kind of almost maybe a double 4 here, a 5 right here, and that's the end of the horn, or I should say the beginning. And there's not enough horn growth here, and there's not ring separation for a 6-year ring. So this is a 5-year-old ram. But what would you estimate the Boone and Crockett score to be? And we should take a look at the rear view as he's looking away. And it's that rear view that you're going to get the best look as far as rings go, because after all, it's not the contact surface of the horn. So the rings are well preserved in a relative sense. So you want to have that look through your spotting scope as well. And you can see the constant continual taper here on both sides. I'm hoping you're seeing my cursor. And as far as a Boone and Crockett score, this ram scored 150 2/8. Okay, so now we have our second sheep. This is a California Bighorn. We got the front on look. The lighting isn't perfect, but that's what you're going to encounter in a real world situation. Now he's clearly older. He's carrying mass through here. Hopefully you see my cursor. You can see that mass. He's broomed off nicely. He's dropped low relative to the jawline. There are quite a few rings. In this view, it's not adequate really to come up with an age estimate. So we'll take another look. We need another look. Okay. Now, if you remember earlier in the presentation with the hand-drawn illustration of how to age a ram by the horn ring method, that ram was looking in the other direction. See, we're looking at the right side of the ram, but in the hand-drawn illustration, we saw the left side, and at the 3 o'clock position with his head oriented the same way, there was the 3-year ring. So on this ram, who's oriented the other way, what ring would that be? Right there. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so, as we talked about earlier, the older the ram gets, the closer these rings get, and it can get really, really difficult. And that may be why you want that rear look. So here we have 3-year, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Really hard to see. And sometimes even in hand, it's difficult. But there's no doubt that's an older H-class ram. We can see that with the many rings. He's holding mass nicely. And what would you venture a guess or an estimate on the Boone and Crockett score? Okay, he's a 10-year-old, of course, and he is a mid-150s ram. And so there are some of the other horn metrics if you're interested. And we'll move on to our next ram, a Desert Bighorn. And we don't have the greatest look here, but by any means, it's a fine-looking ram. There are indications, yes, he's a mature ram. He may have a beat-up face a little bit, but he's certainly got a full body, heavy neck. He's a mature ram, but he's really not that old, is he? He's got no blemishes really on his horns, no chips. He has retained both tips. He's not very broomed. Over much of the length of the horn, the distal portion, it's tapering. So yes, he's a mature ram. Yes, he has nice mass off the head for a short distance, but he's young. And again, we could see he is carrying some mass. There's no doubt he's trophy class, but he's not that old. This is the same ram. front on shot. Got a lot of taper, still has his tips. How old would you say? He's mature, but he's not that old. Well, he's a 6-year-old. And if you were to venture an estimate on Boone Crockett's score, what would that be? .164 7/8. It's a pretty good horn length too, though. 36 5/8. Those are good bases. If that ram had lived another year or two, that would have been just incredible what that score would have been up to. Okay, another ram, our next ram.
Pat, I want you to point out to the audience your best cue for determining the 3- and 4-year-old rings. Mine has always been you still have the girth between the 3 and the 4, but once that 4-year-old ring is found, it's the same girth all the way to the base of the head, right?
I'm not sure I understood the question that well, but in that hand-drawn illustration, so when you're evaluating a ram and you're thinking, okay, it is what appears to be a trophy class ram, and that hand-drawn illustration is useful from a number of different standpoints, but given that you understand the orientation of the head is upright looking forward, that with a 3/4 curl ram, for the most part, that 3-year ring is going to be at the 3 o'clock position if that ram is looking to your left, and it'll be opposite if it's looking to your right. And then you're also going to look for that deep, dark 4-year ring. But you have to remember, there's always exceptions. That's one of the points I was trying to make. Sometimes that 3-year ring is not an indistinct series. Sometimes it's actually distinct, or sometimes you can't see it really at all. So there's nothing really hard and fast. It takes a lot of looking at sheet, really. But and that's why we talk about other things other than the horn rings. We talk about body characteristics and other horn characteristics that help us get to that point to where we think, you know what, this is the ram I'm looking for. Well, anyway, this is I think our third ram. It is a desert bighorn ram, and with the images that we have right here, left and right, we know it's a trophy class ram. We get this beat up face, sunken chin or cheeks, and Roman nose. It's carrying nice mass here, but with the light, we can't quite see what's going on horn ring wise. Even here on the left, we can't quite see really what's going on, but there's no doubt it's a trophy class animal. So now we get a front view of the same animal, and it's got a triangular horn conformation. It doesn't seem to have a whole lot of mass down low at the end of the horns. And my question is, do we really have all the information that we need to accurately gauge the caliber of this ram? And I submit to you that we do not. This is the same ram. And we didn't get that side look earlier, but we have it now. And there is quite a bit of mass. And so what we're looking at basically is probably 3 years going on in here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's a 12-year-old ram, for heaven's sakes. And so, he's much more massive than we thought. That's why you need every possible angle you can get to help you make a determination if that ram is in that size class that you're looking for. So if you had to estimate the Boone Crockett score, what would you come up with in this case? Well, he is a Boone Crockett ram. That is, he is in excess of 168 Boone Crockett points. He comes in at 169 2/8, and he's darn close to being a 170-point ram. Really impressive. Very good basal circumference measurement, 15.5 inches. although he's a little bit short in length, he was massive. And if you can imagine what he would have scored if he had 37-inch horn, 36 or 37-inch horns. Okay, our last skull is a Rocky Mountain Bighorn ram. And right away, this is impressive right away from the get-go. You can see how low he drops relative to the jawline. He's holding mass very nicely in here. There's a number of different horn rings. We know he's older age. He's broomed off somewhat, both sides. Let's advance to we have a rear glimpse. And remember, it's that rear view that's going to offer us, in most cases, the best view of the rings. And so what we're looking at here, because this ram, like I said, is going to be an older age class ram, we're looking at, this is year 3 here, and this is year 4. And yet, like I said, he's throwing a double 4 in here. The double rings, if they're going to occur, they're most likely to occur in year 4. Occasionally they occur in year 5. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and there's 10 in there if you can believe it or not. And our side view. So there's 3 year is going on in here. I hope I have my cursor working.
You do.
There's 4 here, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10-year-old ram, Rocky Mountain ram. And the remaining question to ask is, what would you estimate the Boone and Crockett score here? Boone and Crockett score, 163. His bases were actually less than average, really, for a Rocky Mountain. His horn length also was kind of less than what average, I suppose, too. So he was just kind of a real good 10-year-old Rocky Mountain ram, but nothing really outstanding, nothing remarkable in terms of basal circumference or horn length. And with that, that basically wraps up the age score and training session. We've gone through 5 skulls. I hope that helped. Sorry about the mouse control, but I think that's just about it, and good luck.
We're going to go back to a couple slides that I forgot, and I'm not sure if Pat or Ed wants to cover those. We just got a couple wrap-up slides, so I'm going to share those. So Pat, you want to take us to the finish line, or Ed?
Either one. Pat, do you want to do it, or do you want me to wrap it up?
Go ahead, Ed. I'm not even quite sure what's next. So
Okay, so just a few more things to cover. Like Ryan said, maybe contact your taxidermist before you go out. You're going to want to take some great photos after that ram's on the ground. Make sure that, maybe that mouth is closed, the blood's all off of its face, or whatever the case may be. Be prepared to pack it out if you're in some tough country. And remember, some of those larger animals, whether it's a Rocky or a California ram, they can be pretty heavy to be packing out. So keep that in mind. One thing you will have to do this year with the whole COVID and everything, make sure you call ahead to those offices and make an appointment to check those rams. It's going to be a little bit different this year. You're not just going to be able to show up. There may not be anybody there, whatever the case may be. You guys will all be getting emailed a list of the offices throughout the state. Make those contacts on your way back in, or when you need that animal checked, or whatever the case may be. Just make sure you get that taken care of. Next slide, Mike. So we'll be putting this plug in your horn. That shows that it's a legally harvested ram. You got to do that within 5 days of harvest. Like I said, make those phone calls to make the appointments. We just need to see that skull with the horns and your taxidermy stub. The tag, like Mike said, should stay with that meat. And then we'll get that plugged for you, and you'll be good to go to your taxidermist after that. Another thing that's kind of new this year is the 218 form, the observation form that was talked about earlier. This is going to be, I believe, an app that you can put on your phone even. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Mike, but I think that's the way it's going to work this year. Very, very important information to the biologist. Make sure you do that. You'll be asked at check-in. And if you haven't done it there, then you're going to have to do it during check-in process. But this hopefully will make it a little bit easier for you.
Yeah, there was instructions on the letter in the email that was sent earlier notifying you about this seminar, where we had instructions of how to load that form onto your smartphone, and then using that to fill out not only the ewes and the lambs and the rams you might see during your scouting trip or hunting trip, but there's questions that you can fill out if you happen to see a domestic sheep, domestic goat near wild sheep, or if you see a sick sheep that might be coughing, nasal discharge, poor body condition. You have the opportunity to fill that out. And then once you're back in cell coverage, that information is sent to us. But don't assume that we're going to check that data. As we said, please call Operation Game Thief or your local biologist as soon as you get cell coverage if you happen to see potential interaction of wild sheep and domestic sheep.
And
Any last parting words, Ed?
Finally, I want to thank every one of you for being here for this presentation. A little bit different style than what we've had to deal with. I hope it went well for everybody and you got all your questions answered. Enjoy your hunt. This is going to be an awesome hunt. Take your time and just enjoy it. And like I said, again, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
We will have, this has been recorded, and our Conservation Education Division will be posting it on our Facebook page, maybe by the end of the week, if not early next week. So if you want to watch it again, you'll be able to zoom through the seminar to those spots that you want to brush up on. So you'll be able to see this again. Go ahead.
Sorry. Just real quick, Pat, one question that came in is the current drought conditions, how will that affect sheep this year or sheep hunting? You may be good to address this to the group.
Joe, this is Pat. Was that question directed at me?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's a good question. And if there is little to no rain, in other words, we don't have monsoon activity develop, we don't have monsoon storms going into early fall, then we can expect that with the dry conditions, and you have to understand ruminants that are forced to be on dry feed actually have heightened water requirements. So unlike most other years, what we can expect going into this hunt season, if dry conditions prevail, these sheep will be on water throughout the fall and even into some of the winter months until we get some relief with some winter storms. So yeah, so it will influence distribution. Sheep will be in proximity to water sources going into the opening, November 20th opening of the season if we don't get rainfall.
Ed, why don't you talk about conditions up north with a lot of our California bighorn hunts?
Yeah, you know what, up north here, we are experiencing a lot of dry conditions as well. fire danger is extremely high. It probably still will be at the start of the season here coming up on the 1st. Just be aware of that. I mean, I've been out quite a bit doing surveys, and it's just dry and dusty out there. And these sheep are going to be searching out water sources, kind of just like down south. So it could change things a little bit for these sheep, but for the most part, we're looking fairly good on a lot of our springs and our water developments, unlike down south. So just keep that in mind. But the dry conditions are kind of persisting at the time. So keep that in mind while you're out there driving around. We don't need to have any additional fire start or anything like that.
We might be able to stick around for a few minutes and answer those questions that are still open. But for the most part, I think we're finished. So thank you from all of us for attending, and have a great hunt and a great season.
And then, Pat, there's one additional question relative to guzzlers going dry and how the sheep might respond.
Is it specific to an area, or is it just general?
Not specific, just in general, how would they behave?
For the most part, at least in the very southern part of the state, when we're talking about water developments, we're actually talking about developments in series. In other words, they're in proximity to one another. They tend to be within 2 to 3 miles from each other. The thought being that ewes and rams, but primarily ewes, will have knowledge of more than one water source. So that was the thinking behind grouping the water development. So if one does go dry, then the sheep that are dependent on it are aware of and have the ability to travel to an adjacent water development. That's pretty much the answer. Where we get into serious condition is when drought persists, or drought conditions persist so long that we have successive water developments going dry, and then that constitutes basically an emergency. And that's what we have actually going on this week. We're hauling water to some water developments in 3 different mountain ranges over the course of this week, in fact. Any other questions there, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, to indulge more specifically, Pat, that question seems to be directly related to Hunt Unit 268, where we've hauled water the last couple of days to a couple guzzlers.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to be monitoring. We have 6 water developments in Unit 268. We have 2 on the south end of Muddy Peak, and then we have 4 that are on the eastern half of the White Basin main section of the Muddy Mountains. And we have hauled water, aerial hauling of water Monday and Tuesday of this week to the 5-ram water development that had gone dry 3 weeks ago. We put a substantial amount of water in that project. We also hauled water to the nearby Flipper project. And from what I understand, we have about 80-85% capacity now there. So we're in much better shape than we were last year. I don't think that the water developments on Muddy Peak will go dry, but we'll have to actually watch that closely. I think we only had one will. The Jerry project will go dry. The Safari project, I don't know. It might go dry, but we're keeping a close eye on it.
All right. Well, again, thanks everyone for attending. Hope you learned a ton and can enjoy your hunt and be successful. Take care and have a great evening.